Similar to his views on political power and those who hold it most successfully, he gave instruction or satire, depending on what you want to believe, on how the military is to be understood, its role and its celebration in society. The Art of War was delivered in dialogue form between a soldier and citizens. Anyway, what Machiavelli said was that the larger community has an obligation in supporting the troops, using and employing the troops to their greatest advantage. I mean, it sounds good, or does it? Using the troops against who? For what purpose? What did he mean by advantage? Was he saying that if your society wanted something that another had that would benefit you, that would be advantageous, you should support the troops as they acquired it for you? To what end? At what cost? Where is their mercy? Where is their morality? Where is their restraint and discipline? What kind of situation does that mentality produce? What kind of world does that produce? What of the weaker groups? What of the poorer groups? How does this affect one's foreign policy? I mean, it sounds good, doesn't it? Society should be patriotic and support their troops. They keep them safe and secure. But the way Machiavelli presents it is open-ended, isn't it? I mean, to what ends do you support your troops? And again, these seem like obvious positions, right? I mean, you could say, well, Jeff, you're kind of taking it too far. No, I'm not. It depends on your position in life. It depends on how you view the world. It depends on what you have right now and what somebody else has and how badly you want or feel that you need it, right? So these seem like obvious positions. Be patriotic, support your troops, they keep you safe. That's not what Machiavelli was saying. It's what we're used to. We like to create in our heads a reality around our own heroes and representatives that really does not exist. I mean, don't worry. You, our adversaries, other people groups, we all do the same thing, right? We're not unique in that. Well, anyway, back in the day, back in Machiavelli's day, these were not concepts that were popular. They were new. They were feared and they were shunned by both Catholics and Protestants across Europe. And then all those wars came just after Machiavelli's time. And contrary to people's consciences, the philosophy of Machiavelli found its way into European society. By any means possible. The ends justify the means. Deception, lying, cheating, even the murder of one's opponents is understandable, if not acceptable, according to Machiavelli. Again, in the context of a political leader and in the context of the military purpose. He's not talking about ordinary citizens just being willy-nilly. Although you could read into that, couldn't you? You see how this gets slippery? It may seem like this philosophy is common. It might seem universal. It might seem like it should need no introduction, if only to verbalize what everyone already understands. But is that the case? If I take the end of that argument, is that taking it too far? Is that too extreme? Can you see how someone could do that? Can you think about historical examples where people have done that? I mean, this is certainly the mindset and the worldview that the English brought with them from Europe. That's why we can celebrate. That's why they celebrated their leaders. They collectively had an agenda and celebrated those that delivered. And likewise, those in control were often ruthless. They claimed a sanctimony that oftentimes does not hold up to scrutiny outside of their own group. Machiavelli said that a defeated enemy, quote, must either be caressed or annihilated, end quote. What does that mean? Let's develop that a little. A defeated enemy, quote, must either be caressed or annihilated, end quote. Failing to do either leaves an enemy able to recover. Machiavelli said, whoever believes that great advancement and new benefits make men forget old injuries is mistaken, end quote. Did you get that? He said, quote, whoever believes that great advancement and new benefits make men forget old injuries is mistaken, end quote. That means you stick it to a guy once, even if you attempt to make it up to him in some other way, he's going to remember that you stuck it to him. Louis Fisher, in his book Men in Politics, gives us a great illustration. So let me ask you a couple of questions first to preface this. What happened to Germany after World War I? How did that turn out for Europe? How did that turn out for the rest of the world? I mean, one could argue that between the German offenses during World War II and the ferocity of the Japanese, that all of the world is still reeling from the broken European colonial period. That's a much bigger discussion, but it really is true, right? I mean, between the Germans and the Japanese, Africa and Asia primarily, they basically demonstrated that the European colonial powers could be beaten. And it wasn't long after World War II that most of these regions saw demands and ultimately achieved their quasi, at least, independence from the colonial powers of Europe. So, at any rate, Lewis Fisher brings up a good illustration here. Again, what happened to Germany after World War I? Had Germany been annihilated or placated? Had they been punished but not left impoverished with no real ability to reorganize after World War I, maybe the latter conditions for World War II would never have materialized. If Germany had been, as Machiavelli said, caressed or annihilated, maybe their later great advancement and new benefits would have made those German men forget their old injuries. I know it's a simple illustration to a larger, much more complex problem, but political pacifism does not always work. It seems no matter the personality in these latter days, domestic and foreign entanglements often seem to be unavoidable because caressing and annihilation, real carrots and sticks, have been taken off the table. Of this illustration, Lewis Fisher said this: Niccolo Machiavelli gives advice in The Prince on how to treat defeated adversaries. They, quote, must either be caressed or annihilated, end quote. The Allies did neither. They could not or did not want to annihilate Germany, and their rough caresses irritated more than they placated. Reparations, the French occupation of the Rhineland, and the Versailles Treaty were symbols to Germans of their inferiority and weapons, therefore, which the reactionaries could use against the Democratic Republic, end quote.